Now, just a little warning before getting started that there will be major spoilers in this video for Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, so if you have not seen it yet and you don't want anything ruined, it is a good time to click away. Okay, so first let me confess that I knew very little about Shang-Chi going into this film. I'm not overly familiar with the character from the comics, and so I really didn't know what to expect from this movie. Plus, I haven't kept up too much with any or all of the news and info or controversy around it. Which, of course, there has been some of that. There are those hoping to see this movie fail because of comments made by some of the cast and crew, and that's your prerogative if you feel that way. But I'm not going to get into any of that here. I'm just going to talk about the movie itself, what I honestly thought about it, both good and bad, without caring about who said what outside of it. And you're, of course, then free to agree or disagree with me or speak your piece in the comments below. However, I will point out that the theater I saw it in, which was the 6 p.m. Thursday showing, or the very first showing overall, was about 80% full, I'd say. Which I think is worth noting since, like a lot of people, I'm very curious to see how the theater industry is doing these days, if it can recover after the last year and a half of insanity. And also, this is not getting a simultaneous release on Disney Plus like Black Widow did. So, for a lot of reasons, it's going to be very curious to see how this performs at the box office. As for my opening or overall thoughts here, well, I thought it was pretty good. Not great, but certainly good and highly enjoyable most of the time. There is quite the lull in the middle of the movie, which is bookended by a rather fast-paced, action-packed, and exciting beginning, as well as by a very Marvel, a bit over-the-top, special effects-driven ending. Which wasn't bad, mind you, the ending. I mean, it's just that the martial arts, which at times are anywhere from very majestic and beautiful and graceful, to sort of brutal and gritty and in your face, well, they take a backseat to a more flashy battle fought within sort of over the Ten Rings, which I do get. The Ten Rings are right in the title of the film, and they are clearly important to some sort of bigger picture here, which we learn about in the mid-credit scene, which I'll talk more about later. I also think that the core of the movie and story is excellent, that being the family dynamic. The larger story is a bit weak. It basically boils down to a monster that can destroy reality is stuck behind a wall, and Shang-Chi's father, who is the Mandalorian, but not the Mandalorian at the same time, he thinks his wife is calling to him from the other side, that the people of this village that she comes from are keeping her trapped there for reasons. And not even his kids can get through to him, who clearly love their mother too and would love for her to be on the other side of a wall. But of course he doesn't believe any of them and starts punching his way through the dragon scale wall towards the end. And even when these soul-sucking creatures start coming through, he still doesn't want to believe this might be a trick of some kind. And yeah, I get it, grief can make you do crazy and stupid things, especially, I guess, if you've lived for 1,000 years and only known one brief love who you lost way too soon, and while you had her, you had these perfect kids and this perfect little life. But at the same time, he's not an idiot, he's anything but, and so not questioning it at all seems a bit off to me, especially because, other than this, he's handled exceptionally well in the film. He is certainly one of the better Marvel villains overall, mainly because there's a good deal of complexity here. You can understand and relate to him, and there are many times you're sort of torn. There's part of you that hates this guy and wants to see him get what he deserves, while other times you wish it really was his wife on the other side of the wall, so he could go back to the guy he was very briefly with her. And again, he is the Mandarin from the comics, but not him at the same time. He's essentially the same character, but doesn't and wouldn't ever use that particular name. He actually makes fun of the name because it doesn't make sense. It's actually the name of a fruit. And he talks about how someone took his identity as a leader of the Ten Rings and used that name, as seen in Iron Man 3, with Trevor being an actor who plays him, which, in my opinion, was one of the worst subversions of expectations I've ever seen. But let's not get into that. Though speaking of Trevor, he is in this movie, which I half expected after seeing that Disney Plus had put up and sort of featured the All Hail the King one-shot, which I think was first seen on the Iron Man 3 Blu-ray or DVD, where we learn that the real Mandarin, who again is not the Mandarin, he is not happy with Trevor and actually breaks him out of prison because he wants to talk to him face to face, basically. And well, it turns out he's just been keeping Trevor alive for reasons, I guess, so we could have Ben Kingsley in the movie, which is fine. He's a great actor, and I did like his performance as the Mandarin and as Trevor. Again, it just was a strange and really not appreciated subversion of expectations. Anyway, though I thought Trevor offered some nice, humorous moments at times, especially with his little animal friend or whatever the heck it was, I don't know that he actually added anything to the movie. You could take him out and not much changes other than not having a sort of guide to the mystical land of Ta Lo, which is actually in a different universe altogether, we're told. And I was rather surprised how much of the movie took place there. Probably about or just over half of it. Wasn't really expecting that, though again, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect from the movie or its plot. But I thought this was going to be all about, or held all in, the real world or the real world of the MCU. And we'd see Shang Chi have to take down his father's criminal empire, and that it would end with a big fight between the two. You know the drill. Instead, his criminal empire turns on him pretty much instantly when the soul sucker creatures arrive. It even kind of gets played as a joke, likely so you don't think too much about how odd it might be that they would again instantly say, screw it, let's join with the villagers in order to survive, betraying a master, or sort of betraying a master, that they seem to have the utmost loyalty to. Almost cult level loyalty, you'd imagine, when you consider who this guy is and how powerful he is and what they've seen him be able to do. Though in the end, or in the post-credit scene when Shang-Chi's sister is supposed to be dismantling the Ten Rings organization, she actually pulls a Book of Boba Fett and claims the throne for herself, which was interesting, I guess. I think of all the main-ish characters, she may have been the weakest overall. Her main motivation seemed to be that she was betrayed by her brother, who left her behind when they were kids, and now she wants to see women be able to fight and train right alongside men, so I'm assuming they can take care of themselves. And she believes this to the point where she's creating an underground fight club at the age of 16. One her father just lets go, it seems, even though his own rules were against that sort of thing, or men and women fighting together, despite the fact that his wife once kicked his ass. And he clearly knew where his daughter was the whole time and what she was up to, since he lured Shang-Chi to her to capture them both with a postcard that was postmarked from where this fight club was. Though to be fair, I guess the father did say something about giving them time, both of them time, to do whatever they wanted for a little while with their life, and that now it was time for them to get back to the family business. So I guess that explains why he never cared about what his daughter was doing with this fight club and why his son was parking cars in San Francisco. Either way, she's now going to be running the Ten Rings, while Shang-Chi himself, as well as Caddy, his best friend, and it's interesting to note she was never turned into a love interest. There was no love interest for him at all in this film, which I somehow find both refreshing and maybe peculiar, though maybe they didn't want to take away from the main love story between his father and mother. Plus, there was reconciling to be had with his sister. It was all about family in this one, so they maybe didn't want to overcomplicate things with a love interest for Shang-Chi. Anyway, it now seems like Shang-Chi is going to be pulled into the larger picture of the MCU. In the mid-credit scene, Wong, who was great in this movie, he shows up and takes him and Caddy to a meeting with both Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner as they try to figure out what exactly the Ten Rings even are. And my initial guess is it'll have something to do with the Eternals, but who knows for sure. Either way, we see that Professor Hulk is no more and that Bruce Banner is just Banner again, which I'm certainly not upset to see. I wasn't a huge fan of that combination in Endgame. And we learn that he has no idea what the Ten Rings are, or how they work, or really anything about them, nor does Captain Marvel, who, even though her appearance was very brief, it seems as if they're really trying to lighten up her personality a bit, which I think is a good idea. Other than that, or to start to wrap things up, again, I thought this was a pretty good movie. The score or soundtrack actually stood out to me, which is rare in Marvel films. The fight scenes, especially earlier in the movie, were absolutely fantastic. The mystical land of Ta Lo and all its creatures were nice and a wondrous spectacle to behold. The CGI looked pretty good in this. And the core story about family, by and large, works very well, even though there is quite a slowdown in the middle of the film. Simu Liu as Shang-Chi is quite likable, and you buy into and care about his story and his character and his relationship with his father and his sister and his friend, even if his sister maybe could have been handled a bit better overall. I think the weakest part had to be the overall story. The monster behind the wall just felt a little generic, and I dare say the movie may have been better if that was removed somehow in favor of almost strictly focusing on the family issues, if our ending battle was Shang-Chi versus his father, and if maybe it involved the Ten Rings a bit less, despite, yes, the title of the movie being the Ten Rings and how important they are. And I think that may have been better over a huge battle of a dragon versus a huge soul-sucking monster. Even though, yes, that dragon did look pretty cool. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Or are you somewhere in between? Or maybe have you not seen it yet but watched this review anyway? Or are you maybe not planning to see it at all for one reason or another? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Marvel. And until next time, thanks for watching.